Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me in this masterclass, Boundaries and Balance as Professional Mums. I'm assuming most of you, if not all of you, are here because you are mums who are, working mums in various roles. And this is a topic that hopefully will be of interest to you. I know this is a topic that's of interest to me. That's normally how I work out what content to create or what to post on social media is what's of interest to me. And hopefully it's also helpful. So we'll just start off with the acknowledgement of country. And I understand that a lot of you are from various traditional lands. So I would just like to pay respects to the traditional custodians of the lands, the various lands in which we're all meeting this evening. For myself in Melbourne, it's the Wurundjeri Woi-wurrung people of the Kulin Nation, and really wanting to pay respects to elders past and present, and also acknowledging the lived experience of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander mothers and families who were part of the stolen generations as well, given this is a topic about mum. So wanting to acknowledge that as well and respectfully acknowledging your various lands. So we have quite a lot to get through in this session. So as I said, we'll see how we go for time. There may have to be a part two, but we'll see how we go. So what we're covering today is the layered cake. So if you don't know what this is, it's just a little creation of mine. So we'll be talking about what that concept is, identifying energy drainers in our lives and careers, the importance of including self-care into our daily, not weekly practice, but daily practice, guilt as a working mum. And then the bonuses at the end are upcoming events, an exclusive discount offer, and a live Q&A. I'm a little bit ambitious with time, I think. So a little bit about me, for those of you who aren't aware, I did include a short introduction video in the email that I sent out to you all as well. But I just took a selection of photos that sort of encapsulate my identity as a professional mum. So the one on the far left was me I believe I was on my due date with baby number 2, which was my oldest daughter's first day of prep. I was lucky to be able to make it, and all the teachers commented, "When are you due?" To which I replied, "Today." So I really wanted to include that as well. So that's, I guess, the start of, well, not the start of my journey, but the start of this part of my journey. Then the next photo is my youngest daughter, the one I was pregnant with at the time, Angelique, who was sitting on my desk doing colouring during COVID lockdown while I was trying to work from home. And this picture really, to me, just highlights the struggles of being a working mum, trying to juggle the work and family life. Then there's some other photos. So there's one at a McDonald's party with my twin sister and I. I'm on the left, dressed as a kitty cat. And then there's a picture of my very small and modest home office where I do a lot of my client sessions and recording. And then that's a picture of me holding up the Australian Social Work Journal. I was fortunate enough to be asked to do a book review. So that was the edition that my short but mighty book review featured in. And there's another picture of an office that I used to work at as a mental health practitioner in a school. So I use these pictures to show both my journey of being a working mum, both in the home and in the office, and little parts from my life, just so you can get to know me a little bit more. So if you are into social media, I'd love you to inspire other professional mums out there to come and join this movement that I'm attempting to create to empower other working mums. So you can feel free to tag me. That's my Instagram. And you can also use the hashtag my name as well, Jazminpursell. So that totally optional. Okay, so this is part of the bonuses. So this is a thank you discount for attending the masterclass this evening. So if you are a helping professional, so if you're a social worker, a counsellor, psychologist, youth worker, therapist, anyone in a helping profession, and you would like group supervision, you can use that discount code Masterclass 0603. I can't quite put that in the chat. My mouse doesn't really like to work when I screen share, but it will be on at the end as well. And that will give you a $40 discount of either the March or April group supervision and career coaching programs. So let's get into it. Okay, so this is introducing the concept of the layered cake. And I tried so hard to find a picture of a layered cake on my phone, but this one from Canva had to do. So I'm a really visual person, so I really wanted to highlight some of our various identities as professional mums using this analogy of a layered cake. So the layers in the cake form the different parts of our lives. So they could be, for example, our profession and our career, parenting, any sort of social connections, our health and well-being, also our family of origin. So some of our upbringings, how we were parented ourselves, and some of our early life experiences also form another layer, which forms part of our identity. And the frosting and the decorations on the cake is the outward appearance. So it's what people see when they look at us. So how tall are you? What do you look like? And often we would, as you probably all have experienced, often we would be judged based on, the frosting or the decoration on the cake or how we present. And similar to a real cake, in the way that if a cake is beautifully decorated, I'm sure you've all been to a wedding before, or you may have had your own wedding, but if you've been to a wedding and you see the intricate wedding cakes, and people often gasp when they see the cake and they think, oh, how beautiful, look how many layers there are, look at the icing and the detail. But then that's just the outside of the cake. And for me, I always care what's on the inside of the cake. I actually am the type to scrape the frosting off, unless it's cream cheese frosting, but I will actually scrape off the frosting, and I'm more interested in what's inside the cake. And same with when I get to know people and they get to know me, then I always like to think that they are interested in the layers of the cake and not just what it looks like from the outside. And notions such as, the perfect mother, the perfect wife, the perfect partner, the perfect employee, whatever industry you work in, these are also part of the frosting and the decorations on the cake as well. So just a reflection for all of you. And if you have any reflections you'd like to put into the chat, definitely feel free, or you can just sort of think in your head, but how many different layers do you have in your cake? Are you a really tall 3-tiered cake with so many layers, so many different parts of your identity and aspects of your life? Or are you like this cake I found on Canva, only about 3 or so layers? So it's a good way I always like to use analogies because it helps me understand some of these concepts. And there's so many different parts of ourselves in our identity as mothers that it can be, what was I going to say? My train of thought. I don't have a script and I don't take notes. I just naturally present what I'm thinking. So it just means that I'm very unscripted. So I hope that's okay with everybody. So what does this actually mean? So is this cake vanilla, white chocolate, coconut, all of the above? Sometimes when people see us as a working mum, so it could be colleagues or other mums in your networks, sometimes when they look at you being a working mum, they may have formed assumptions about what sort of values you have, what sort of career you have. And I know for myself, as a working mum, particularly when I put my oldest daughter in childcare for the first time, I definitely had a lot of judgment and criticism from other mums who, who were just looking at my, the kind of that frosting on my cakes, or that outward appearance of me, rushing off to work or rushing off to a uni lecture, which was the case when my older daughter was young. I was still a full-time student. So that can then cause those judgments from other mums. So I really just wanted to acknowledge that as well, because it definitely still, I'd like to say that it doesn't happen, that it doesn't still happen, but it's definitely something that's happening quite frequently. And is this and I invite all of you to reflect on whether you've had this experience as well, where you may have been judged unfairly or unharshly, whether it's by fellow mums or whether it's by any colleagues, for how you present or for the sheer fact that you are a professional mum. And you don't have to answer in the chat. This might be something more a personal reflection. So I'm going to try and move there. I've popped out the Zoom chat, but unfortunately it's covering some of my text, so I can't read all of my screen. That's okay. We'll make do. So, introducing the concept of mum guilt. So originally, when I started writing this or putting this presentation together, I was also doing research at the same time. So I've actually changed this concept from mum guilt to work family guilt. So work family guilt arises from the necessity to choose between the work and family domains. So it's the constant juggle. There's just some pictures there from my own personal experience. So juggling health worries, the housework, the parenting. And in that picture there, that's my youngest daughter, Angelique, helping with the washing. And then there's my sort of work and study juggle as well. So it's then the reason why I changed it from mum guilt to work family guilt is because the word mum guilt sounds like it's a fault of our own, that we feel guilty about being a working mum. So when often for most of us, it isn't a choice to be a working mum, given that with the cost of living and everything is just unattainable on a one income, and there also are, one income families or single parent families. So the notion of a mum having the luxury of not having to work, it is quite rare. So I wanted to really remove any sort of blame about this guilt to mums. So that's why after reading some research, I've changed it to work family guilt. So it's also really important to acknowledge that this guilt can impact decisions we make. So all the research that I'm referring to, it will all be listed at the end as well. And I'll send a copy of the slides to you all. So if you'd like to read further into any of the research, then you definitely can. And I didn't do hours and hours and days of research. So there will definitely be further resources out there, which I endeavour to cover in other masterclasses as well. But these are just a few research articles that I found quite helpful. So now in the energy drainers. So if you all wouldn't mind in the chat writing some examples of what's draining your energy at the moment. It could be professionally, it could be family life, it could be anything else. And of course, you don't need to say anything that's private. You could just say an example of something that's draining your energy. I know for me, what's draining my energy today is that I donated blood earlier. So I'm feeling a little bit more tired than I normally would be and a little bit scratchy where the bandage was. So that's currently what's draining my energy. And I don't know if, and everyone could be super energized, but for me, there's always something that's draining my energy. And just while we wait for any. Okay, so we've got some. Let's read in the chat. So we've got, haven't set boundaries on private practice and casual work, like I have with part-time employment, prepping lunch with a toddler. Yes, Kimberly, I hear you. I don't have a toddler anymore, but that was ever so frustrating. I should have included a photo of meal prep with little children. Yeah, they're definitely great ones. And feel free to add any other comments or questions in the chat as we go along as well. Okay, I'm just checking. We're going pretty okay for time. That's good. So, and some ways, okay, we've got endless housework, doing everything myself, kids arguing, and Kimberly saying you were sweating while you were trying to prep the lunch. Life has become a routine, same things on repeat, single mum and 3 kids and a full-time job. Yes. Yeah, so many things. And often it's not, the reason I think I put energy drainers plural rather than any energy drainer is because there's always more than one thing that's draining us. And it's not just parenting and it's not just work, it's all those other things, the meal preparation, the housework, the kids' extracurricular activities. I know my children do so many activities. I think there's only one weekday in which none of them have an activity. And it seems endless, the routine. So just some considerations for all of you. Like, are you switching off from work at 5 p.m? If that's your finishing time, are you actually switching off? Or are you finding that you might send that one last email, or you might just stick around and wait to see if you received a response from that last minute email as well? So that's something that I myself have struggled with. Now I'm definitely improving with my boundaries. Are you allowing yourself to be on and present when you are spending time with friends, family, and in your activities that you do in your daily lives? So I've got one idea and then a few examples. So implementing boundaries at work or in your business and your personal life. So, and these are all things that I've been guilty of myself, and that I've now made a conscious effort to try and do things a little bit differently when I realized that it was draining my energy even further and really not serving me. So these are some tips. So refrain from sending that last minute email. It's happened to me before where I've sent that last minute email at 2 minutes before my finishing time, because for me, it's all about that. It had always been about that notion of, the perfect employee and not wanting to be seen as any less of a team player than my colleagues that don't have children. So I found that I was always trying to work extra hard to impress, because I felt that I was automatically at a disadvantage being a working mum and having to leave on time, whereas some of my colleagues who didn't have children were happy to just stay back and do some extra overtime, often without being asked. This was particularly the case when I worked in child protection, in which it was almost expected that you would be working late. So having those boundaries, and if you try and refrain from sending those last minute emails, then you're also potentially avoiding that last minute phone call. So sometimes people will see that last minute email from you, pick up the phone and give you a call. Then what turns into what could have been you leaving on time at 5 o'clock, it then becomes 5:30 because you're now stuck on the phone. So that's something as well that I would suggest trying to avoid. Another way that you can add boundaries in your personal life and your professional life is, and we've all been guilty of it, but trying not to send your children to childcare or school because you know what a busy day you'll have at work and thinking about everything that you'll potentially miss out on. I remember there was one particular day, because I always like to draw on my own experience because I'm never one to just give people any suggestions if they haven't worked for me. So I remember there was one particular day in which I was having some water actually, because I did donate blood, so I've got to keep hydrated. There was one particular day and I had a really busy day at work. This is when I was working as a school-based mental health practitioner. I can't remember what I had in particular. I believe it was some parent meetings that I really didn't want to miss. And my daughter, who gets quite bad blood noses, had a really bad blood nose and was vomiting in the morning. My husband was already at work and I had made the decision to, instead of staying home with her, to call my husband at work and ask him to leave work and take care of our little one. She was kinder aged at the time, so quite young. I believe she was about 3. So I also didn't want to be late for my day. So I dropped off my older daughter at before school care and chose to take my sick younger daughter in the car and then get my husband to meet me on the way. And it definitely, as I reflect, was not one of my finest moments as a mum or as a working mum. But I think it's really important to be honest with all of you, because there should be no, I guess, shame and guilt around this. As I said, we've almost likely done it before or may do that in the future. But when I reflect on it now, many years later, it actually, and I've since long left that role, but it actually makes me wonder what my motivations were for not just putting in the boundaries and saying, my child's sick, I can't come in today. And it wasn't a lack of sick leave. I had plenty of sick leave. It was purely because at that moment, I felt the guilt, the work-life guilt, that I couldn't possibly call in sick because there were so many things I needed to do and I didn't want to seem unreliable or not committed to my job. So fast forward now to several years later, that's not something I would ever wish to repeat again, because it's something I still reflect on now and really wonder what I was thinking. So if you ever had that moment, I have too. Another thing is setting yourself a 10-minute undisturbed time block. So I struggle to spend long periods of time on any one task. So I tend to jump between, I might start preparing meals, but then there's something I have an idea for my business. So all of a sudden I've got my notepad out and my laptop, and then I'm typing something, and then there's a song that I have in my head, so I'll start listening to that. So what I found to try and ensure that when I'm spending quality time with my children, if we're reading a book, for example, or if there's an email, a really important email that I need to send, for my business, then I'll try and give that task just 10 minutes of my undivided attention without, scrolling through my phone, without jumping to the next thing on my to-do list. I'll try and give it just 10 minutes of my undivided attention. And I find that can help with some of these energy drainers. And I know that my children, my daughters really appreciate it when they can have even 10 minutes of my undivided attention. And I sometimes set myself challenges. This isn't on the slides, but as I said, I go rogue. I don't have a script, but my husband and I rotate with our youngest daughter's swimming lessons. And so when it was my turn to take her, occasionally I may have just glanced at my phone just to see, oh, did anyone message me, or quickly check Instagram. And then for the last few weeks, I set myself a challenge to not even pick up my phone once during her swimming lesson. And it's only a 30-minute swimming lesson. So I actually went 3 times as long as my 10-minute time block. And the only time I checked my phone was to actually check the time, so I knew when her lesson was finishing. So that was a challenge I'd set myself, which it actually made me feel a lot better because I was actually able to observe more and be present in the moment. So this is something that you can also do, whether it's related to your career or your family life. If anyone has any other ideas about any ways to try and set any boundaries in your career, or whether you have a business or personal life, feel free to put them in the chat, because I'm sure there's ideas that others can learn from. So, daily self-care is not a luxury. We need to take care of ourselves before we can take care of others. And I'm not going to go into the analogy of in the airplane, they talk about it, the oxygen mask. I won't even go there. We've heard it a million times. And if we don't take care of ourselves, then everything else can potentially seem much more difficult and much, much more draining. So some reasons why self-care as a mum it's not selfish and it's not a luxury, it's a necessity. So just some examples of career stresses. And again, all the resources are here. So just a few: job insecurity, difficulties with your boss or your supervisor, or unsupportive colleagues. If there's unclear expectations placed on you as an employee, that's another one that can cause significant levels of stress. And if you're not clear on your job description, or you thought you were clear on your job description, but it keeps changing daily. The work conditions, so long hours and not having enough breaks. I know quite a few teachers, and they regularly speak of having to work through their breaks and not actually having breaks. I know for myself, working in schools for several years, that was very much an issue there as well. Whether you're a teacher or in any other role, there's definitely these working conditions are definitely a cause for increased stress. So the system itself causes barriers. So it's often called the motherhood penalty. So it just means that simply by being a mother, that there's certain disadvantages that you may have. So an example that I can think of is, and there was definitely some research around this, is that there's often less opportunities for leadership for women, particularly working mums. And if you're someone who's working part-time or you have a business, there's not always those opportunities to advance. I guess if you run your own business, you are the leader. So maybe this is more relevant for people that are, employed by an organization, in that, and this is something that I've seen myself, is that there's less experienced staff who don't have children, who are often put into more senior leadership positions and progress a lot quicker than their colleagues who are working mums. So I've seen that quite a lot, and it's often because the mums are working flexible work hours. Maybe they're working around school hours, maybe part-time, maybe they're working full-time, but the sheer fact that they're the primary carer for their children means that they're not able to work any unexpected overtime as well. But it's not all doom and gloom. There's something called the motherhood advantage. So this is, I guess, the flip side of the motherhood penalty. So the motherhood advantage, and I loved when I saw this, so this had to absolutely go in the slide. So if I read this part a little bit word for word, that's because I think it's so important. So there is some research that indicates that there are actually some advantages for the careers of women once they become mothers, such as developing new skills, increased time management, and we all know from personal experience that we have to be the masters of time management if we're like Kimberly and we're making toddler lunches, and if we're like Chanel, single mom, juggling everything, then we know already how to be exceptional at time management. And we know what we need to get done, and we just get it done. Even if it is such an energy drainer, as we spoke about, but we just know how to get things done. And interestingly, one of the things I pride myself on is being on time. And I can probably count the number of times on, I'd say, my 10 fingers in which I've been late in my life to meet someone. And when my daughters were younger and we had play dates, I would always allow extra time, to get there about 15 minutes earlier. And not everyone is like that. And I know some people do run late. But for me, learning to manage my time, but then put a bit of extra buffer of time in just in case, was really important to me. And that's a skill that I mastered once I became a mum. Prior to becoming a mum, I would have thought nothing of turning up late, particularly on a first date, fashionably late and all. But I was happy to be fashionably late even to work prior to having children. But ever since having children, I feel that I've had to become skilled at managing time. Simply, there's no option not to be good at this. And the research also suggests that there can also be increased confidence of working mums to pursue different career paths. So in the work that I do, my business, I provide a few services, but one is career development coaching to largely women. And a lot of the women that I've spoken to, myself included, have actually chosen to change their career path after having children. So it's actually led to them either seeking a career with a greater work-life balance, or whether they're seeking a higher income or a promotion at their current job. So it often leads to the increased confidence to sort of push yourself that a little bit further. And I think that also comes down to having little people that rely on us. And then there's a few, since I'm a visual person, there's a few screenshots there from my Instagram showing some of the ways that I embed self-care in my life, including being outdoors, health and well-being, food, makeup, going out, all the things. And for all of us, we would have different self-care routines and things that are important to us. And these are not all that's important to me, but these are some of the key things that I do regularly for self-care. Would anyone like to share? Either you can unmute yourself if you're brave, or write in the chat, what are some things you do for self-care? And you can also tell us that why you don't think it's a luxury, if you have any other reasons. Face masks and walks. Thanks, Shannon. I do like a good face mask. Anything else? I'll have another sip of water as we wait. Walks and reading books on your Kindle. That's very environmentally friendly of you, Jordan. Love it. I've also started, probably a year ago, I started Zumba. And it was just a challenge I'd set myself because I'm not coordinated at all. So starting Zumba was sort of like a personal development challenge, but also it's such a good way to get moving. Does anyone else like Zumba? Just me? So Chanel saying gym sessions on weekends while kids are asleep. Yeah. So sort of a key theme with everyone is saying getting moving. And also the beauty stuff. So pedicure, says Kim, masks. So, okay, so this is just again that the code for the masterclass. So it's sorry. This is a code. So to say thank you for attending the masterclass. So this is for the group supervision. So for a $40 discount, and it's a 3-month group supervision and career coaching program for helping professionals. So instead of being $390 for the 3 months, it comes down to $350. And I should have mentioned before that this code is only valid until midnight tonight, and that's Melbourne time. So that's Masterclass 0603. If anyone has any other questions that you think of afterwards, feel free to send me an email. This is my contact info. There's going to be future masterclasses and some other events. So there is definitely more to come. So this is just the beginning. And I'll send you all a copy of the recording and the slides as well. And finally, here are some of the references and resources. So the first part is the references that I have referred to, some different research articles, and some other recommended resources for you all. So there's a few podcasts on there, like Do You Effing Mind, and then Burnout to Brilliance. And then there's 2 books on there as well. And both of those books are available as audio ebooks. So given we're all time poor, you may not have time to pick up a physical book. So I use the app BorrowBox, and you can actually get the BorrowBox app normally for free through your public library. So you will log in through your public library membership, your login details, and then you'll get the app of BorrowBox, and then you can get these for free. So I always like to share free resources too. So as I said, you'll all get a copy of this as well. So I'll stop the sharing. Let's see. Okay, there we are. All right. Does anyone have any last minute questions or reflections? Well, I really appreciate everyone joining me so late on a Thursday evening. And hopefully this will be the first of many of these masterclasses and other events. Thanks, Shannon. Thank you so much, everyone. Really appreciate your company and for supporting one another and me as the presenter. Thanks so much, everyone. Take care.